in that country, and the government is starting the mass evacuation process today. Also comes at a time when the MEA has issued an advisory against non-essential travel to Israel. We'll tell you all about what's happening in West Asia on the show today. Also on the show, we'll talk about Rajesh Agrawal, the Secretary of the Commerce Ministry, saying that India and US are finally close to inking that trade deal, but it will be announced only when both sides feel comfortable. Well, we've got a trend going all of last year, and that continues in 2026 as well. And that comes by way of surging silver prices. Will silver touch that 3 lakh rupee per kg mark after the precious metal scaled to 2,89,000 rupees per kg? And of course, we can't leave you without a mood check on the stock markets. Mohit Gang will be here on the show joining us later. You're watching this edition of Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9 this Friday morning. Here are the headlines we're tracking for you. India begins evacuation of its citizens from Iran as protests intensify, with first flight departing Tehran today amid rising violence and safety concerns. And amid an uncertain security situation across West Asia, the embassies of India, US and UK have issued advisories for their nationals, urging them to be vigilant and avoid unnecessary travel to Israel. India and the US trade agreement is very close as negotiators resolve final issues. Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agrawal says the deal will be announced once both sides are ready. Meanwhile, India and the European Union move closer to finalising long-pending free trade agreement as top European leaders will visit New Delhi for Republic Day and summit talks. India and Canada move to restart free trade agreement talks as both sides finalize framework to resume negotiations after the 2023 pause. Silver races towards the 3 lakh rupee per kg mark as bullion prices hit fresh records, with gold also reaching a new all-time high in Delhi, hitting 1,47,000 rupees per 10 grams. The Supreme Court overturns High Court relief to Tiger Global, rules Flipkart stake sale taxable under India-Mauritius treaty norms. Air India's new Airbus A350 grounded after baggage container is sucked into engine at Delhi airport following return from aborted New York flight. And foreign student enrollment falls at US universities for first time in 3 years as Trump's immigration crackdown hits graduate programs. The top story this morning: India has said it will wait for the fine print of a proposed US executive order before assessing the impact of fresh tariffs announced by President Donald Trump on countries doing business with Iran. New Delhi clarified that its trade with Tehran is limited and largely humanitarian in nature. Now, this comes after President Trump said that any country doing business with Iran would face a 25% tariff on all trade with the United States with immediate effect. Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agrawal said that India's exports to Iran mainly involve humanitarian goods and services, and that the government is closely examining the announcement while awaiting the official executive order. Backing this position, the Federation of Indian Export Organizations said Indian companies and banks are fully compliant with US Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control sanctions. It said trade with Iran is restricted to permitted categories, primarily food items and pharmaceuticals. Now, the backdrop to this is already fragile trade ties. Remember, US sanctions imposed in 2018 had sharply reduced India-Iran trade. In the year 24-25, bilateral trade stood at just $1.68 billion, with Indian exports accounting for $1.24 billion, mostly from the agriculture sector. India's exports to Iran make up just 0.28% of its total global shipments. Key exports include cereals, tea and coffee, spices, fruits and vegetables, animal fodder and medicines. Imports from Iran mainly include dry fruits, chemicals and glassware. Now, the announcement has raised concerns among exporters who are already under pressure from steep US tariffs imposed last year. Now, beyond trade, India and Iran share strategic interests, particularly in the Chabahar port project, seen as critical for regional connectivity. And staying with tensions in West Asia, as protests continue to escalate in Iran, India moves to evacuate its citizens from that country. Now, the Ministry of External Affairs is making all arrangements to facilitate the return of Indian nationals who wish to travel back home. The first evacuation flight is scheduled to depart from Tehran to New Delhi today. The Indian government issued an urgent advisory earlier asking all citizens in Iran, including students, pilgrims, business people and tourists, to leave immediately, citing rising violence and instability across the country. The MEA has urged all Indians to stay in touch with the embassy and ensure travel documents are ready. 4 emergency helplines have been activated as well to assist citizens. The advisory also noted that due to an ongoing internet shutdown in Iran, registration with the embassy has been slow. Families can now register their relatives through the MEA's online portal. The unrest in Iran, now in its 3rd week, began over economic hardships following the collapse of the national currency. Protests have since escalated into a broader challenge to the country's theocratic leadership, raising concerns about public safety.
के खुल के बोल नहीं रहे हैं। अब वो कहते हैं, सोचते होंगे कि पेरेंट्स जो है ये मत क्या कहते हैं घबरा जाएं, तो इसलिए हालात ठीक नहीं है।
बहुत समस्या है वहाँ पे, ये किसी से छुपा नहीं है। तेहरान में बहुत हालात खराब है, उनके पास खाने पीने को कुछ नहीं है, शट डाउन है, इंटरनेट शट डाउन है, फैमिली भी क्या कर सकती है। तो अब हम रिक्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं इंडिया गवर्नमेंट से एंड प्लस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन से, एज सून एज हमारे बच्चों को आप लिफ्ट करवा दीजिए।
पिछली दफ़ा जिस तरह गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने, एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स मिनिस्टर ने खुद पेन्स लेकर बच्चों को, पिलग्रिम्स को, बिजनेसमैन्स को इवैक्यूएट कराया था वहाँ से, मुझे पूरी उम्मीद है इस बार भी दे आर फुली कैपेबल ऑफ डूइंग दैट। इस बार भी वो हमारी हेल्प कर लेंगे।
वैसे ही बुलाया, उन्होंने कहा कि आप अपने ओन यहाँ से लीव कर दो, ईरान को छोड़ दो। हमने उनको कहा हमारे पास ना पैसा है ना इंटरनेट चलता है, 1 रुपये की चीज़ 10 की मिलती है, हम कहाँ जाएंगे। तो उन्होंने कहा है कि एम्बेसी ने कि हम अभी कोई मदद नहीं कर सके जब को हम हाई अप से ऑर्डर नहीं आएगा।
While the White House says all options remain on the table when it comes to possible US military action against Iran, warning of grave consequences if the killing of anti-government protesters continues. Now, speaking at a news briefing on Thursday, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said President Donald Trump and his team have conveyed a clear message to Tehran that continued violence would trigger a strong response. The remarks came just hours after Trump appeared to strike a slightly softer tone on Iran following several days of sharp warnings, even as he reiterated that military action remains an option if further killings are reported.
What I will say with respect to Iran is that the president and his team have communicated to the Iranian regime that if the killing continues, there will be grave consequences. And the president received a message, as he revealed to all of you and the whole world yesterday, that the killing and the executions will stop. And the president understands today that 800 executions that were scheduled and supposed to take place yesterday were halted. And so the president and his team are closely monitoring this situation. And all options remain on the table for the president.
And after Iran, the government of India has warned citizens to also avoid non-essential travel to Israel. The advisory has been issued by the Ministry of External Affairs amid tensions in West Asia. India has issued an advisory for Indian nationals in Israel, advising them to remain vigilant and strictly adhere to the safety guidelines. The advisory comes as Iran is in the middle of the widespread protests, with the US not ruling out interference and military action in the country. Meanwhile, Iran has warned that US military bases in the region will be legitimate target of Iranian strikes in case America attacks. Now, amid the heightened tensions, there have also been concerns in Tel Aviv, an arch rival of Tehran in the region. Meanwhile, several areas in southern and central Israel have ordered the opening of public shelters amid heightened regional tensions, according to local media reports. And shifting focus now to trade deals, especially the long-pending India-US trade deal and the Indian and the United States. Both the sides are now reportedly close to finalizing a bilateral trade agreement, with negotiations entering what is defined as the final stretch. Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agrawal said on Thursday that the deal will be announced once both sides are ready. Now, speaking to reporters, Rajesh Agrawal said negotiating teams from India and the US are currently discussing virtually all pending issues, adding that talks have never broken down and that engagement between the two sides has remained consistent throughout. The momentum comes after a series of high-level engagements. In late December, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal held a virtual meeting with US Trade Representative Jamison Greer following a visit by a US delegation led by Deputy US Trade Representative Rick Switzer earlier that month. Now, earlier this month, in the month of Jan, US Ambassador to India Sergio Gore also underlined that both countries are actively working to firm up the trade deal. The push for a deal comes despite recent strains in bilateral ties. The Trump administration's steep 50% tariff on India, along with disagreements over immigration policy and other political issues, have added pressure to the relationship. Even so, Agrawal said bilateral trade between the two countries continues to post positive growth and New Delhi remains optimistic. And from US, let's pivot to the European Union. And India and EU could be on the verge of sealing that long-awaited free trade agreement, with talks intensifying ahead of a high-profile visit by top EU leaders to New Delhi later this month. The President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will be in India from Jan 25th to 27th at the invitation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The two leaders will serve as chief guests at India's 77th Republic Day celebrations on Jan 26th and will co-chair the 16th India-EU summit the following day. Trade Secretary Rajesh Agrawal has said that New Delhi and Brussels are very close to finalizing the trade pact, with efforts underway to see if it can be wrapped up before the leaders meet. According to Agrawal, 20 of the 24 chapters of the ambitious agreement have already been finalized, with negotiations continuing on the remaining issues on a day-to-day basis. Remember, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has also indicated that the deal could be signed by the end of January, as he recently visited India. Merz urged both sides to move quickly, saying that agreement would help stabilize supply chains that have faced repeated disruptions. And it's not just US and Europe. Let's continue to stay with trade deals. India and Canada are moving a step closer to restarting negotiations on a long-pending free trade agreement, with both sides now working to finalize the terms of reference. Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agrawal said that New Delhi and Ottawa are engaged in discussions to finalize the scope and framework of a mutually beneficial trade pact. He said the government hopes to complete this process soon, allowing formal negotiations to begin. Trade talks between the two countries were earlier underway but were paused by Canada in 2023. Officials now say discussions will restart from scratch, citing major changes in the global environment, the trade environment especially, over the past 2 years. The terms of reference will define what the proposed agreement will cover and how negotiations will be conducted. Both India and Canada have already appointed their chief negotiators. India's team will be led by Commerce Department Joint Secretary Brij Mohan Mishra, while Canada has named Bruce Christie as its lead negotiator. Trade ties between the two countries remain substantial. India's exports to Canada rose nearly 10% to $4.22 billion in the last financial year, even as imports from Canada dipped slightly to $4.44 billion. Overall, bilateral trade in goods and services stood at a massive $18.38 billion back in 2023. And now let's move on to precious metals. Silver prices continue their rally, and that rally continued even yesterday, scaling yet another record and moving even closer to the 3 lakh rupees per kilogram mark, while gold also touched its fresh all-time high in the national capital. According to the All India Sarafa Association, silver surged as much as 3,000 rupees in a single session to hit a new peak of 2,89,000 rupees per kg, extending gains for the 5th straight day. Now, over just the past week, silver has jumped nearly 16%, adding more than 45,000 rupees per kg, and has now delivered over 21% return so far this calendar year 2026 alone, once again outperforming gold. Now, gold too remained firmly on the upswing. Prices rose 800 rupees to a record of 1,47,300 rupees per 10 grams, taking gains since the start of the year to around 7%. Now, traders say the rally is being driven by sustained buying from jewelers, stockists and retail consumers, even as international markets showed some sign of cooling. The market experts say silver's strength is being powered not just by investment demand, but also by rising industrial use. With growing demand from solar energy, electronics, electric mobility and infrastructure, silver is increasingly seen as a strategic metal in India's growth story too. However, analysts caution that silver is more volatile than gold and prone to sharp price swings. Investors are advised to approach it with a disciplined long-term strategy. And in a landmark ruling on international taxation, the Supreme Court has set aside a Delhi High Court judgment that had exempted Mauritius-based private equity firm Tiger Global from paying capital gains tax on its 2018 Flipkart stake sale to Walmart. The Apex Court overturned the High Court's August 2024 order, restoring the tax department's position that the transaction was structured to avoid tax and therefore not eligible for benefits under the India-Mauritius Double Tax Avoidance Agreement. The court held that once a transaction is found to be an impermissible tax avoidance agreement, treaty benefits under Article 13 of the DTAA cannot be claimed. The tax department welcomed the verdict, calling it a crucial moment in India's evolving global tax jurisprudence. But skeptics of this particular order are saying that this could potentially reduce capital flow into India. Air India's newest Airbus A350 has been grounded after suffering engine damage at Delhi airport yesterday following a rare and serious ground handling incident involving a loose baggage container. The aircraft was operating flight AI 101 from Delhi to New York with over 250 passengers on board when it was forced to return shortly after takeoff due to the unexpected closure of Iranian airspace. After landing safely in Delhi, the aircraft sustained damage to its right engine while taxiing to the parking bay in dense fog. According to reports, the aircraft's right engine ingested a foreign object, later identified as an improperly secured baggage container. No passengers or crew were injured. Now, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation has launched a probe into the incident. Preliminary findings indicate that a ground handling truck transport baggage containers crossed the taxiway, during which a container toppled and was left behind. The container was then sucked into the aircraft's engine as it taxied in. Air India confirmed the incident in a statement, saying the aircraft was safely parked and all passengers disembarked without injury. The airline said the aircraft has been grounded for detailed inspections and repairs, warning of possible disruptions on select A350 operated routes.
What the staff is here like?
And with that, we will slip into a very short break. But Mohit Gang will be joining us on the other side of the break to help us understand the drivers of the market mood, especially as we are in the thick of earnings season. Remember, Infosys has already announced a solid growth in its revenue. Meanwhile, the bigwigs, Reliance Industries, Wipro and Tech Mahindra, are expected to announce their Q3 results today.
A tall cappuccino with caramel syrup and cardamom.
Sure. A tall cappuccino with caramel syrup and cardamom. Sure.
Tall alfacino with camel ka soup and kaati diyegi mom. अदरक वाली चाय पिलाओ ना, कड़क।
सर, मलाई मार के देती हूँ।
लाइफ हो या इन्वेस्टिंग, भीड़ के पीछे मत भागो। म्यूचुअल फंड अपनाओ और खुद के हिसाब से इन्वेस्ट करो।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
With Skoda Supercare and growing network across 180 plus cities, you never drive alone. Skoda.
फाइनली हमारा घर।
तुम्हारी जिद का नतीजा।
मैं नहीं होती तो तुम्हारा क्या होता?
इनकी जिद ने आज इन्हें दिया एक परमानेंट एड्रेस टाटा कैपिटल होम लोन्स के साथ।
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. Time to now shift focus to stock markets. And it would have been a flat day for the Indian stock markets had it not been for the IT story. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. Meanwhile, let's look at the Nifty and the Sensex figures this morning. Remember, markets have been open for just about 5 minutes or so. So these could be early trends and perhaps not necessarily trends at all, as market could move in either direction depending on news flow and, of course, the earnings as we are in the thick of the Q3 earnings season. Meanwhile, Sensex holding at about 83,650 odd points. Nifty 50 also up about 0.2 of a percentage point at about 25,718 in the first 5 minutes or so of trading. Remember, volatility in the Indian stock markets has been relatively lower. We are not seeing the kind of swings that we had become accustomed to seeing last year every time Donald Trump made some announcement. But as things stand, in fact, all of Jan so far, the India VIX, also called the Fear Index, is pretty much relatively low at the levels of about 11 to 11.5. Talk about the small cap and the mid cap space. Well, the mid caps are seeing some action this morning. The mid cap 100 index is up about half a percentage point, holding above that 60,000 level. Let's shift focus now to the Nifty 50 heat map and try and see which are the sectors which are leading these gains that we are seeing on the charts today. And it seems that the IT space is actually the biggest driver of growth. And that's because we have seen results come in already from TCS, which were fairly muted, to put it really mildly, but also the bigwigs of Infosys, which did announce the results the day before yesterday. Remember, markets were closed yesterday on account of BMC elections, but we are seeing that play out on the charts this morning. Meanwhile, HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank are all set to announce their Q3 results tomorrow on Saturday. So investors really in mixed territory as far as both these stocks go. Reliance Industries, the big one, is going to announce its results later today, and those are the big drivers of expectations as far as the overall mood on stock markets goes. But the IT space, and let's talk about the IT space, and the IT space is what I'd like us to pull up now, is pretty much the flavor of the town today. Infosys stock is up almost 4% after that solid 45,000 crore rupees of revenue was announced in Q3 alone. Remember, Infosys is also so far the aberration, so to speak, of an IT company which has in fact inducted more number of employees, as many as 5,000 of them. Meanwhile, Wipro and Tech Mahindra both expected to announce their results today, but we are seeing a rally because it seems that investors are riding high on a similar trend set by Infosys to also be seen on the street when it comes to both Wipro and Tech Mahindra announcing their results. Well, Mohit Gang will be joining us on the show this morning to help us understand what to really expect from the market and the market mood that we are seeing. Mohit, if you can hear me, good morning, and thank you so much for your time this morning. I want to first up understand Infosys, massive set of numbers announced, but then markets were closed yesterday. But we are seeing that sort of play out on the indices this morning. Infosys stock is up about 4% or so now. Wow, in fact, it was in the region of about 3.9. Now the Infosys stock is up about 4%, and this comes after revenue of 45,479 crore rupees was announced, and even the net profit, while relatively lower at about 2.2%, did indicate that Infosys is holding on to its operating margins of about 20% or so, and has given a growth guidance of 3 to 3.5%. Overall, does your view on the IT space now partly change with the traction we've seen? First, with AI revenue coming in for TCS at about $1.8 billion and an overall growth of about almost, one could say, about 9% year on year for Infosys.
Hi Karthik, morning. Look, I think on the IT space, honestly, since the time you've seen rate reductions happening in US, the cycle has kind of turned favorable. If you recall our last discussion, maybe perhaps last to last discussion, I maintained that this quarter we will have to see how the earnings come out, and perhaps then it can just be the time to take a dip on the IT side. However, there is no clear trend as of now which emerges. But having said which, I think the Infosys earnings have kind of taken the mood up, uplifted the mood of the entire sector. My sense is the market is taking cognizance of the growth guidance out here, Karthik. I think 3 to 3.5% guidance is a pretty strong, solid, robust guidance coming out from the bellwether stock of IT index. And I think market just likes that the leadership is again back to the helm and they are taking charge from the front, right? So Infosys has long lost its position as the market leader, and TCS has been a favored stock, but it's coming back to shape now and it's picking up on the growth part as well. Along with that, I think the AI revenue coming in for TCS, I'm not pretty sure as to how that entire story works out in favor of India or the Indian IT space, because I think globally the market has taken to a new trajectory when it comes to the AI play. I still strongly believe that India continues to be an anti-AI trade as it stands today, which means that as and when the world kind of melts down on the AI froth, India should perhaps see some resilience or see some uptick because of the core IT service enabled systems or the companies which we have domestically. So my sense is, yes, it's now time to start taking cognizance of the IT pack per se. I would still though remain a little more bullish on the mid and small IT pack. On the large cap side, it's a stock selectors market, I think so, and one has to be a little cautious, but yes, the cycle is turning in favor.
Right, the cycle definitely seems to be turning in favor. Meanwhile, I also want to talk briefly to you about headcount. And again, we've seen some sort of a divergence, at least in the earnings announcements by first TCS and HCL Tech, and then by Infosys as well. While TCS continues to lay off employees, we've seen junior level employees stack up at HCL Tech, keeping the overall reduction in employees to just 3-digit numbers, 260 or something, if I remember correctly. Meanwhile, Infosys in this quarter alone has added about 5,000 odd employees. So overall, we are looking at an outgo of 25,000 employees from TCS, an inflow of 5,000 employees at Infosys, and a decline of just about 250 odd employees at HCL Tech. Overall, what does this tell you about employment in the IT space, and which one of these figures should one really look at to understand what is the trend going to be going forward? Are there going to be more firings or more hirings?
It's a pretty tricky one, Karthik. Honestly, I think no one knows where the die will roll up by the end of 2026. But my sense is we still are in that declining phase of employee hiring on the overall IT pack. I think, as I said, India has been late to the AI party. So typically all these IT companies which we have in India are now picking up on the AI processes and systems and per se trying to adopt newer avenues. And my sense is we will see the impact on the workforce going forward through the coming year. I'm not pretty sure as to what market makes out of the reading. Look, reducing numbers can mean good, healthy bottom lines and cost reductions sometimes, but can also show a declining trend of newer contracts, right? So you will have to weigh which side it goes. Adding employees for sure shows that yes, there is good business coming in and the likelihood of strong business momentum continues. So that's a pretty positive trigger on the revenue front, right? So my sense is adding more employees kind of adds to the impetus, and that's why you're seeing Infosys giving us such a good green tick in the morning. On the other side, though, cost reduction could be a favorable thing, and one can also argue that perhaps the company is adopting more AI practices, hence they're reducing costs, reducing the employee strength, and maybe that will augur well for TCS 1 year or 2 years down the line. But as of now, I think market takes that a bit cautiously and in a negative frame.
All right. And then, of course, let's continue with the IT story. We have two other big IT Nifty 50 IT stocks, Wipro and Tech Mahindra, expected to announce their results today. In fact, looking at the momentum, in fact, in the IT stocks right now, Wipro is also up, I think, on the trend that Infosys seems to have potentially kick-started. Wipro stock is also up about 3.3%, and even Tech Mahindra holding strong at about 2.7%. But overall, what are the street expectations on both these? Relatively smaller as compared to TCS and Infosys, but large enough IT stocks?
Look, we don't expect a big surprise from both the players out there. Honestly, I think it should more be in line with the market estimates. And my sense is Wipro has taken quite a hammering for last year and a half. So perhaps it's time that the stock now shows some kind of resilience. They're all quoting at reasonable multiples, right? So I don't expect any extraordinary surprises. But yes, I think status quo should also be good for the market given the way Infosys is leading the charts.
This other big one, and we're talking about Reliance Industries, and Reliance never surprises to surprise you, and Reliance Industries also expected to announce its results today. There hasn't really been much speculative movement on the Reliance stock. In fact, looking at the Reliance stock right now, it's up just about, a third of a percentage point or so. So any big surprises expected this time around in terms of announcements when it comes to potentially, the separation, the demerger of Jio? Do you think that is something that could potentially be announced as part of today's results announcement?
I think market is sensing that, Karthik. I'm not pretty sure. It's never too easy to call out with the big boy on the street. They can come up with surprises at any point in time. However, I think market is expecting something on the front of Reliance Retail or Jio demerger or something of that sort, right? So I'll not be surprised if one of those kind of announcements do come through, and I think that should be a good positive trigger for the stock. Stock is showing some resilience and has shown some decent up move, I would say, in last 1 month odd. But yet, I think market requires some good trigger for the stock to be taken up to the next level, and I think I'm sensing something coming up today evening.
All right, something hopefully would come up, which is going to be of interest to the investors of Reliance Industries. Meanwhile, let's move away from the sectoral focus, Mohit, and spend a minute or two on overall what is the outlook for markets, as we are already beyond pretty much the middle of Jan. Half the month is over, and in this half month alone, we've seen FIIs sell as much as 16,600 crore rupees. This is just the first 15 days of this calendar year. Remember, we had made headlines back in November when we had seen 18,000 crore rupees or so exiting in a month. And this year, just in the first 15 days of Jan, it's about 16,600 crore rupees. Meanwhile, it's not just FII exit. We are also seeing a parallel rally in silver and gold prices. India-EU trade deal expected to close by end of this month, but pretty much no definition to the deadline of the India-US trade deal being announced. And then just about 15 days or so from now is also the Indian Union budget. Overall, a lot of variables playing out perhaps for investors, a lot of data that they are trying to make sense of, and a lot of deals that are expected to be signed. What should one expect as far as the markets overall at a Nifty 50 at a Sensex level go? Do you think they are going to be range bound this entire month?
Look, Karthik, I think first on the trade deal part, the EU pact per se, and if you compare it with US standalone, I don't think so there is too much of differentiation out there, hardly a big number difference out there. My sense is US would be a $30-35 trillion kind of an economy, and EU pact per se put together would be somewhere in the region of around 25 trillion. Right. So there isn't a big difference. You sign a deal with the EU, it's as good or as big as what you sign with US. Having said which, I think sentimentally and in terms of the market mood, I think US continues to be the driver of that mood. And honestly, till such time that India signs or inks something with US, I don't think so market is giving us a good reason to go up. Are there reasons enough to go down? Yes, there are reasons and triggers that could be enough for markets to go down. If the result season is even marginally bad or below expectations, I think markets will take a hit. If we are not able to sign a concrete deal with US in this quarter, markets will continue to be range bound and perhaps will show us more red tick. And there is no reason for FIS to come back unless we show that we have a favorable relation going with the big boy on the street, which is US, right? So FIS selling is relentless. Last financial year or last calendar year was a massive FIS sellout, and 15 days, almost 1200 odd crore every trading day of selling is not small for markets to absorb, right? So if markets correct, who will come to support the market is a big question if there are no FIs on the street.
Right.
So that's my worry point. I'm extremely cautious for first quarter till such time that all these things get ironed out. And globally, I think geopolitically, it's an extremely precarious scenario right now. US is on tenterhooks to enter Middle East and flare up the region again. And if that happens, oil might see a burst up, and that's never good for India, right? So all those things put together, if you see, I think it's time to be a little cautious. It's time to take baby steps in the market and just wait and watch for the entire scenario to pan out. Budget can be a possible trigger. Depends on what kind of animal spirits do government wants to unleash again, whether it'll be public spending or whether it'll be again a consumption driven kind of a boost which government wants to give. But there is very little fiscal latitude with the government this time, Karthik, given the way nominal growth of India is, right? So we'll have to wait and watch. But whole in all, I'll remain cautious.
All right. Caution is the word coming in from Mohit Gang. Mohit, thank you so much. As always, pleasure having you here with us on News 9. And with that, we will slip into a short break. But before that, here's a look at the global stories that we're following for you this morning. The United States and Taiwan seal a trade agreement as Taipei commits $250 billion to expand semiconductor manufacturing in Washington in return for a 15% tariff cap. White House claims Iran paused 800 executions amid US warnings over its violent protest crackdown, even as officials stress military action against Iran remains on the table. Venezuela's opposition leader Maria Corina Machado presents her Nobel Peace Prize medal to Donald Trump at a private White House meeting. Trump calls it a wonderful gesture of mutual respect. Russia's oil and gas revenue, a key source of funding for its Ukraine war, sinks to a 5-year low as sanctions, inflation and war costs continue to strain Moscow's economy. Elon Musk's AI firm xAI restricts image editing features on its Grok chatbot after the tool generated sexualized images, triggering regulatory scrutiny worldwide. Goldman Sachs reports a 12% rise in quarterly profit to $4.4 billion, driven by stronger merger advisory revenues and robust performance in financial markets trading. World's top AI chipmaker TSMC reports a forecast-beating 35% surge in quarterly profit and signals plans to expand manufacturing capacity further in the US. Australia's online safety watchdog says tech giants have blocked 4.7 million accounts as the world-first ban on social media for under-16s comes into force. And Amazon Web Services moves to roll out sovereign cloud services across European Union, targeting governments seeking tighter control over data security and digital sovereignty.
Being a chef, it's my priority to deliver taste in a plate with good presentation, unique innovation. You need to explore, you need to experiment.
You observe the people, make them happy, make them feel happy, and in the end you are smiling. That's the most important thing.
तुम डेस्टिनेशन वेडिंग के लिए बजट रोते थे, पर पिक्स कितनी अच्छी आई हैं।
बहुत क्यूट लग रही हो।
ऑब्वियो, अपने दम पे शादी करने का ग्लो।
इनकी जिद ने किया डेस्टिनेशन वेडिंग का सपना सच अपने दम पर, टाटा कैपिटल पर्सनल लोन्स के साथ।
Back, you're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. All two stories now from around the world. Well, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado said on Thursday that she presented her Nobel Peace Prize medal to US President Donald Trump during a meeting at the White House. Machado said the gesture came amid discussions that could influence how Trump's administration shapes Venezuela's political future following weeks of dramatic developments in the South American country. Take a look.
I presented the President of the United States the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado said she presented U.S. President Donald Trump with her Nobel Peace Prize during a meeting at the White House on Thursday. Machado spoke after finishing separate meetings with Trump and U.S. senators, where she was met by a large crowd of media and supporters. Earlier, she said her meeting with Trump went very well. Machado, who fled Venezuela in December, is competing for Trump's ear with members of Venezuela's government and seeking to ensure she has a role in governing the nation going forward. She was banned from running in Venezuela's 2024 presidential election by a top court that was stacked with allies of longtime leader Nicolas Maduro. While he claimed victory, outside observers widely believed Edmundo Gonzalez, an opposition figure backed by Machado, won more votes by a substantial margin. But as their meeting was taking place, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Trump stood by his assessment that she did not have the support needed to lead the country in the short term.
And at this moment in time, his opinion on that matter has not changed.
Trump has on several occasions praised Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's second-in-command, who became Venezuela's president after the U.S. captured Maduro in a snatch-and-grab operation this month. Leavitt said that, so far, Rodriguez has been cooperating.
Venezuela and Ms. Rodriguez have also confirmed that they will be releasing political prisoners from Venezuela. There were 5 Americans who were recently released this week as well. So the president likes what he's seeing and will expect that cooperation to continue.
While the current government has freed dozens of political prisoners in recent days, outside groups and advocates have said the scale of the releases has been exaggerated by Caracas. Separately in Venezuela, Rodriguez spoke in an annual presidential address to lawmakers. She said she would propose reforms to her country's oil industry as investors in the U.S. push for easier access to it.
And US President Donald Trump is expected to decide on his nominee for the Federal Reserve chair within the next couple of weeks, the White House said on Thursday. Now, speaking to reporters, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said the president is considering several candidates and has indicated there are a few people he likes for the role. Listen in.
Can you give us an update on the Fed? Sorry. There was some reporting from, I think, Fox Business that Rick Reeder had an interview this week scheduled. The president's indicated he's already made a selection, or at least he's settling on someone. Where is he in that process, and when can we expect an announcement? Is he still doing interviews?
Look, the president is in the same place as you all have been asking about this for many, many weeks. He's in a decision-making phase. There are a few people who he likes very much for this job, maybe less than that. The truth is, like with all decisions, it's a decision for the president to make. And he said to Reuters in that interview last night that he thinks he'll be finally making that decision in the next couple of weeks. So we will see.
All right, from the U.S. Fed, let's move on to the U.S. stock markets. U.S. stocks rebounded on Thursday after two straight sessions of losses lifted by strong gains in the financial and technology shares. Shares of Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs jumped after the banks reported upbeat quarterly results. The rally was further supported by blockbuster earnings from TSMC, which boosted shares of U.S.-listed chipmakers. Take a look.
Stocks rose Thursday, with the Dow adding 0.6% and the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq climbing 0.25% each. Chip stocks got a boost courtesy of blockbuster results from Taiwan-based chipmaker TSMC, while strong earnings from Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs gave a lift to some banking stocks. Morgan Stanley's shares rose close to 6%, while Goldman advanced nearly 5%. Joe Hegener, founder and chief investment officer with Asterazoa Capital Management, says he expects these banks to continue to perform well in the quarters ahead.
Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs and the rest of the banking sector, their earnings across the board have been really robust on the back of pickup in investment banking activity. The M&A environment is incredibly strong right now. A lot of the sales and trading groups have had a gangbuster year in 2025. We think that trend also continues. And particularly for Morgan Stanley, a very large percentage of their revenue also comes from the wealth management division. And that also is experiencing not only efficiency gains via automation and technology, but the mere fact that equity markets are at all-time highs, assets under management are growing. And that's a boon to the baseline, or the bottom line rather, as well.
Richly valued tech and growth stocks have lost some momentum recently as investors kicked off the year by chasing bargains. Both mid-caps and the small-cap Russell 2000 have been outperforming the S&P 500 so far this year. Other stocks on the move include BlackRock, which increased 6%. A rally in markets lifted fee income at the world's largest asset manager, and Eli Lilly fell nearly 4%. After Reuters reported the U.S. FDA has delayed a decision on the company's weight loss pill by a couple of weeks.
Taiwan's chip-making giant TSMC on Thursday reported a 35% jump in fourth quarter profit, beating forecasts and hitting a record high. Now, the world's leading producer of advanced AI chips signaled plans to expand manufacturing capacity in the United States this year. Take a look.
TSMC smashed profit forecasts in the fourth quarter as the AI boom continued. The world's main producer of advanced AI chips said Thursday profits jumped 35% to $16 billion during the October to December period. It further predicted strong growth this year and said it was working on building more US manufacturing capacity. The Taiwanese firm, which counts Nvidia and Apple as major customers, announced plans last year to invest $100 billion in the US. That was on top of $65 billion pledged for 3 plants in the state of Arizona. TSMC said more land had been bought in the state. The New York Times has also reported the Trump administration is close to a trade deal with Taiwan. It aims to reduce its tariff rate to 15%, and Washington wants TSMC to commit to building at least 5 more facilities in Arizona. Looking ahead, TSMC believes first quarter revenue could surge as much as 40% from a year earlier to $35.8 billion. The AI boom has helped TSMC outshine its rivals, and its Taipei-listed shares jumped 44% last year. The firm's stock is up around 9% so far this year.
A U.S. bankruptcy judge on Wednesday gave initial approval for luxury retailer Saks Global to access $400 million in new financing, allowing the company to continue operations during its bankruptcy process. The ruling came despite objections from Amazon, described as an estranged business partner. Now, once synonymous with high-end shopping for the rich and famous, Saks has struggled to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic as online competition intensified and footfall at luxury department stores failed to fully rebound.
A US bankruptcy judge on Wednesday granted initial approval of Saks Global's bankruptcy financing. It will allow the company to draw on $400 million in new cash, despite an objection from Saks' estranged business partner, Amazon.com. Saks' chief restructuring officer, Mark Weinstein, said during the hearing the company would be dead in the water without the new money, and plans to use it to pay vendors and the company's 17,000 employees. The luxury retail company filed for bankruptcy on Tuesday with $3.4 billion of debt. That's after its merger with Neiman Marcus caused cash shortfalls that prevented Saks from reliably replenishing inventory at its stores. Saks Global's attorneys said stores remain open for business and that the firm has no concern about weakening customer demand. Before approving the bankruptcy loan, the judge overruled an objection by online retail giant Amazon. It had argued its $475 million equity investment in Saks would become worthless if the bankruptcy proceeds with the current financing arrangement. Amazon's attorney said at the hearing that it has little to no confidence Saks can successfully emerge from bankruptcy. Long loved by the rich and famous, Saks never fully recovered from the COVID pandemic as competition from online outlets rose.
Elon Musk's artificial intelligence firm xAI says it has imposed new restrictions on Grok, limiting image editing features after the AI tool generated inappropriate images. The move follows mounting concern from regulators around the world over AI safety and content controls, adding to growing scrutiny of generative AI platforms.
Elon Musk's xAI has imposed image editing restrictions on all users of its Grok AI chatbot. The artificial intelligence company made the announcement late Wednesday. It comes after concerns grew when the service produced sexualized images. Governments and regulators from Europe to Asia have cracked down on sexually explicit content made by Grok. They've imposed bans and demanded safeguards. xAI said in an X post they have implemented technological measures to stop Grok from allowing the editing of images of real people in revealing clothing. It added the restriction applies to all users, including paid subscribers. Social media platform X was flooded with hyper-realistic images of women manipulated to look like they were in microscopic bikinis. They were also shown in degrading poses or covered in bruises. Minors were also digitally stripped down to swimwear in some cases. Billionaire Musk owns xAI, which in turn owns X, formerly known as Twitter. California's governor and attorney general said they were demanding answers from xAI earlier Wednesday. That after Musk said he wasn't aware of any naked underage images generated by Grok. And British media regulator Ofcom said Thursday its formal investigation into X would continue over Grok, although it welcomed the company's policy change.
And finally, we leave you with a story in the world of cryptocurrencies. Pakistan says it has signed an agreement with a firm linked to World Liberty Financial, the main cryptocurrency venture associated with US President Donald Trump's family. Meanwhile, crypto custody startup Bitco says it is targeting a valuation of up to $1.96 billion in a planned US initial public offering. Here's a roundup of the latest developments shaping the global crypto market this week. We leave you with this story.
From Pakistan's ties with World Liberty Financial to Bitco's IPO, this is Crypto Weekly. Pakistan said it signed an agreement with a firm connected to World Liberty Financial, the main crypto business of US President Donald Trump's family. It's to explore using World Liberty's USD-1 stablecoin for cross-border payments. The agreement is said to be with SC Financial Technologies. a little-known company Pakistan described as an affiliated entity of World Liberty. According to a video released by Pakistan's Prime Minister's office, Shehbaz Sharif met with World Liberty's co-founder and chief executive Zach Witkoff in Islamabad. Coinbase CEO and co-founder Brian Armstrong has said the company cannot support a draft legislation US senators introduced earlier this week. It's aimed at creating a regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies. The legislation seeks to define when crypto tokens are securities, commodities or otherwise, and would also hand policing of spot crypto markets to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Without the backing of Coinbase, it's unclear if the markup of the bill can proceed. Nearly a third of crypto companies without an EU license in France are still to tell the regulator whether they intend to get the license required under new EU rules, or if they will cease operating by July. The country's markets regulator issued the warning this week. Under the EU's rules, crypto companies must receive licenses from national regulators in order to be able to operate across the bloc. Those rules came into force last year to bring crypto assets under formal regulation. Crypto custody startup BitGo says it's targeting a valuation of up to $1.96 billion in its US initial public offering. It wants to tap into investor appetite for crypto firms. The IPO market is expected to continue on its recovery path this year, building on the momentum started in 2025.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.
Bangladesh is on edge. Protesters also targeted symbols of Bangladesh's political history.
Mr. Yunus is being the new Jinnah of Bangladesh.
What defines this mob? Who are these people? Where do they come from? Pratham Alo, the newspaper, has also called it a terror attack.
Yunus is the Osama bin Laden of today's world.
The state has no strength, or those who are on the street are the state themselves. There's nothing called spontaneous mob. There's a theory called you keep the pot boiling.
Light, camera, and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News 9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations,